One of the most popular questions Darren and I get every year is, should I be foliar feeding my crops? Does it pay?
Well, when we look at foliar feeding, we're talking about applying nutrients over the top of the crop. Some nutrients can penetrate and make it through the leaf tissue. Others have to be absorbed through the root system. Phosphorus would be a great example of one that really needs to go through the root system, whereas some of the micronutrients you may be able to move right in through the leaf tissue. The question is it going to pay or not? And how do I make it pay? One of the best ways that you can determine which foliar feeding programs are going to be best for you is by doing some soil testing before the season. Now you may think, well, wait a second, what's that have to do with foliar feeding later on? It's going to give you a great base to understand, hey, what is out there? What should my plant be picking up? Now you may find later that even though your soil is really high in something like, let's say, zinc, you may run into a zinc deficiency later, and that's fine. You may still foliar feed zinc even though your soil test says that it's really high. But the big thing that I would say is starting with the soil test allows you to try to fix the big problems. Maybe you find out, hey, I have 1 part per million of potassium in my soil. I really need to be getting some potassium out here. I've got virtually none available for my crop. If you don't do that, if you don't put any out on the soil, I find it hard to believe you're going to be able to foliar feed all your needs later in the season. So we want to start by fixing some of the big things. You know, granted, there's going to be exceptions if you have an extremely sandy soil, very sandy, like complete sand and no organic matter. Sure, this is going to be a little different situation. But in normal crop fields, start by fixing things in the soil. Then we're going to do some plant tissue analysis throughout the season to see which nutrients we may need to foliar feed.
Well, the big thing here is foliar fertilizer is typically a lot more expensive than fertilizer I'm going to put on the ground, so that's number one. And number two, when you're in an area that doesn't get a lot of rainfall, like where we're at, we get 20, maybe 24 inches of rain in a whole year, and that includes the snow, so we don't have a lot of rain. Well, they say that the foliar fertilizers are going to work better when your plant has moisture in it. And very often we're running into drought conditions. So for us, we think that it's much better to invest in the soil. Nevertheless, we do have some success using some foliar fertilizer products, but still the base and what you really want to start with, where you really want to focus 90–95% of your dollars, is with that soil program in most cases.
Well, there's definitely something to, if you've got plentiful moisture, so you haven't been moisture starved, those leaf cuticles are going to be much more open. If you're in a situation where your plant is trying to conserve moisture, it's been really dry, it's been really hot, it's going to be a lot tougher to penetrate through that leaf. So many times in the drier areas of the country, we see better responses on foliar feed products shortly after it's rained. So you get a rain right around a critical growth stage in the crop, and you apply a foliar fertilizer and you can actually get it to go in, where if you don't get that rain, it's tougher to get it in. The other key there that I was talking about is the growth stages. What we see so many producers doing in various crops across the country is they're looking for those key timings. Maybe it's going to be at a key bloom stage in tomatoes or in soybeans, and we'll try and get nutrients out there just ahead of that bloom stage to make sure the plant thinks, hey, I have all the nutrients I need to produce all this seed, so I'm not going to abort any of my flowers. That would be an example of a critical stage. In corn, for example, we want to get all our nutrients out there pretty early because our ear size is going to be determined starting at about V2, V3, up through about V8. Those are critical stages in there. We want to make sure we've got all the nutrients our crop is going to need before it gets to that rapid growth stage after V8.
Well, you can say that, Darren, but when we're talking about foliar nutrients, you can only put a little bit in, and really we want to see hormones, enzymes, everything going with it. You want really a complete type of product to get the best results. But talking about corn, it needs a vast amount of its nitrogen late in the season, after V8. So when you're talking about just some little shot to get the plant going, that's really all foliar fertilizer is. You probably need to do it every week or two if you're running a big foliar fertilizer program. You know, all through the season, you might want to be considering this. But the big thing that I look at is, most of the time, I don't want to spend a lot of my money on the foliar fertilizer program. Yep, if I've got specific issues and I've found products that work for me at the right stage, do a lot of experimenting first before you start investing lots of money on your farm. That's our number one piece of advice. Spend most of your money on fixing soil issues. Let's get those things handled first.
So is foliar feeding going to be the thing that takes you from 200 bushel corn to 300 bushel corn? I doubt it. but it is something that can definitely help if you've got a stressful time and you're trying to bring your crop through that, or if you're short in just 1 or 2 nutrients and want to get a little bit more of them out there.
Well, another key to getting great yields is having great weed control. We'll talk about our Weed of the Week coming up later in the show.